Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is PBM. Today we're going to be talking about the Gauntlet LAN that's coming up this Friday. It starts about I think 11 a.m. Eastern this Friday, and basically for those of you who haven't been keeping up to date, the online split for the spring season is now over, and we are heading into the LAN. So SMITE Masters is the final LAN. Any team or the teams who finished first and second in both Europe and North America are automatically advancing to that LAN. This weekend there will be a Gauntlet LAN to get three more teams from both regions there. One NA, one EU guaranteed, and then will be a the third team will be the runner up from each region of the gauntlet, playing each other, and then the winner of that moves on to the SMITE Masters LAN. So the way it works is the third through eighth online teams for EU and NA go to this LAN, and the top Challenger Cup team goes as well. So Oxygen Supremacy, for example, is the NA top Challenger team. They will play Flashpoint in a best of three. The winner of that will play Noble in a best of three. The winner of that will play Allegiance in a best of three. Every set's a best of three, and then you just basically go all the way through. So E United and Energy only have to win one best of three to advance to SMITE Masters, and yeah, that's pretty much how it works. The wild card is the loser of NA and the loser of EU play best of one. I'm not sure why it's a best of one instead of a best of three, but anyways, they'll play one game. Winner of that will also go to Masters, and then the winner of each actual gauntlet will play each other for seeding purposes. So let's get into it. I'm just going to go into this and full screen it because it's a little easier. So first matchup, Sanguine versus Optimus Gang. I'm not sure if they had a sponsor or not, but it was listed as Optimus Gang on the website, so that's what I'm using. So my apologies if they do have an organization now. So Sanguine made a few roster changes. I believe Dodo is back in mid, Nika is back in solo, and they replaced Mr. Stefan and picked up a new ADC. So Mr. Stefan was considered one of the top prospects by a lot of the pro players, especially those in EU. It seemed like a lot of the people in the EU competitive scene felt like Mr. Stefan was the best player on their team. So at the time of announcing that roster swap, everybody was really confused. But from what Sanguine is saying, they are playing better with their new roster, and I think that moving Nika from ADC to solo will improve them, and also having Dodo go back to mid will improve them, because I don't think either of them were doing that great in their other roles, and these were also the roles that they were on when Sanguine made it to regionals in Season 3, so I don't really know much about Optimus Gang. I believe they have like Gorgonzola subbing in for them, or I don't know what their whole deal is, but anyways, I'm gonna just trust Sanguine that their scrims have been going better since the roster change. I normally like to give the edge to SPL teams versus the Challenger teams for no other reason, or just if for no other reason, but because like they just have better practice. I can't word anything right now, but they get to scrim all the SPL teams more consistently than a Challenger team normally gets to. At least that's how it is in NA. So I would expect Sanguine to be a little more prepared and have a little more experience going into these games. So I will have Sanguine moving on to play Lion Guard. So Lion Guard, they also had a roster change a couple weeks ago. Frostiak, no longer their jungler. He had played for multiple years along with Shadow Nightmare, so a lot of synergy is lost there. Also a lot of lane experience. I think that definitely hurts Lion Guard overall as a team, but they still do have a lot of LAN experience from Shadow Nightmare and from Frezzy. Ducky has performed pretty well at the LANs that he's been to with group stage last year as well as regionals, so I think that Lion Guard still has more experience in Sanguine, and I think overall they're a better team, so I'm going to give this to Lion Guard. I think they'll actually 2-0 here, and I also think that Lion Guard is an interesting team to watch versus Elevate, because I think Lion Guard is one of those teams who has potential to pull out some weird strats on LAN. So going against Elevate, they made a roster swap as well a little bit earlier in the split. So they brought Nalissa in for mid lane, and they brought Numbers in for soul lane. Ever since that changed, they've been performing a lot better. They, I think, were the first team to beat both Obey and Dignitas, who are the number 1 and 2 seeds in EU. When they were both undefeated, they were the first team to take a game off them with that role swap, and they performed a lot better. I think mechanically, Elevate is like one of the top 5 teams in the entire world, NA, EU, every region. And I think that their mechanics, if they are prepared for this LAN at all, can carry them really far. I think that Jermaine and Darda, specifically that duo lane, makes a ton of plays, and they're just super insane mechanically. And I think that that type of talent, if they're focused on LAN, will carry them really hard. I think that they'll end up beating Lineguard 2-1. I think Lineguard does take a game here, even like whether it's just from playing well or if it's from a cheese strat. I think this is a 3-game set either way, but I'm going to give the nod to Elevate. Elevate now going against Rival. This is an interesting matchup because in the last week of the online split of EU SPL, these two teams played each other, and Rival actually 2-0'd Elevate. Give me a second, I gotta drink. Sorry about that. Okay, so Rival 2-0'd Elevate, and for those of you who don't know, Rival was Old Cyclone GG. They've had the same roster for 6-7 months, however long it's been. They played at group stage last year, so they do have LAN experience together as a team. They've gotten a lot better. Placing 5th in Europe is pretty impressive for a younger team. I think that this matchup is pretty interesting because Rival, to me, is a better team in terms of playing with each other, but I think Elevate has much more talent mechanically, and I think that now that they've had over a month to, I think it's about a month, maybe a little bit more, to work with their new roster with Nalissa and Numbers, I think that they should have enough synergy to beat Rival. I think this is a really hard set for both teams, but I think, again, I really like how much talent Elevate has. I think that mechanically they're just really sick, and I think that they'll take this 2-1 again to go ahead and play Enix. So now Elevate versus Enix. Oh, I should have this 1-2, so it's like the bottom team win. Okay, so Enix is, I think, if not, they're definitely the second strongest team in Europe at the very least, along with Energy in this gauntlet. I think that this is really interesting because much like Rival, Enix did have LAN synergy as a team, but even more so because Funball, Lobster, and Zalia have been together for 3 years or however long it's been now. So not only do they have a ton of experience individually, they have that working with each other in shot calling. You add Big Man Tings and Cherio to that, who are also very good at just performing on LAN. I think Cherio on LAN is like one of the top 5 players in the entire world, regardless of position. He's an absolute monster on LAN. I think that Enix is also a team that mechanically can stack up with Elevate and be just as good, if not better. So I think that this is where Elevate's run ends, and I think Enix ends up 2-0ing this. I think Enix is a really, really strong team. And then the matchup everybody wants to see from EU, Enix versus Energy. I could go into all the matchups of this because this is a really sick game just between the teams. They have a lot of experience versus one another. I don't know, obviously Energy, 2-time defending world champs. I don't know what else to say about them. I think a lot of people have kind of been sleeping on how good Energy looked the last few weeks of the online split because of their shaky start in the beginning of the spring, but I think towards the end they were really getting to the form that we expect Energy to be at, and I think going into LANs they always prepare super hard. They were boot camping. I'm going to give Energy I'm not going to bet against the 2-time world champs, I guess is what I'm saying, but I expect Enix to fight extremely hard for this. I think it's a 3-game set, and I think Energy ends up winning 2-1. So Oxygen in the NA Gauntlet. I'm sorry, I keep having to mute my mic to like cough and stuff. I feel a little congested. So anyways, Flashpoint versus Oxygen Supremacy. This is Data Remember, Nerima, Venenu, Scaledon, and Kiki. Basically everybody on that team has LAN experience except for Nerima. Jay has a little bit. He played with his Challenger team, I think, towards like the end of the fall last year on LAN, but I don't think that's really, it's not really the same as playing another SPL team on LAN, so he doesn't have a ton of experience, but it's more than nothing, right? So they go against Flashpoint. I think that the matchup here to watch is really just the ADC matchup. Xeno has been known to perform pretty poorly on LAN. Except for Worlds, he played a lot better than he did at Gauntlet or at group stage last year and at regionals, but overall I think that's still a question mark. And if he's able to win his matchup versus Day, then he could make it really hard on Oxygen. Otherwise, I just think Oxygen is a better team than Flashpoint overall. In scrims, they perform extremely well against some of the other NA teams, especially E United and I believe Eager. They've had some good success in scrims versus them. Scrims, take it for what it is. It's not really worth all that much, but it's more than nothing, right? And I think overall that they do have better leadership on this team as well. I think that Scaly has some good ideas, and I think he's a pretty good shot caller as long as the pressure of LAN doesn't get to him. And I don't think it will this time. That Oxygen should be pretty strong. So I actually have them 2-0 in Flashpoint, and I should have that like that. Going up against Noble is a different story. Everybody on Noble has LAN experience. I'm actually really excited for Noble at this LAN. The main two reasons why are, one, it's Chapo's first LAN as a PC player, and the reason that's significant is if anybody watched the console LAN, Chapo is like one of the biggest momentum players I've ever seen. Like, if he starts rolling and he starts yelling at you from the other side of the room and he starts getting in your head and he starts getting pumped up, he's just like gonna snowball through every game and he'll just plow over everybody. On the flip side of that, if he gets behind early, he, can get in his own head a little bit. So I really love that potential for Noble. If they can win the first game in the set and they can get Chapo going, I think that would be really insane for them. The other reason I'm excited for Noble is I think having Drelo as a coach, he has a ton of LAN experience. He helped Enemy get to Worlds in Season 2. He worked with Flashpoint and Denial back in Season 3. He's just really good at preparing his teams for LAN. He's really good at picks and bans. And I think that in any LAN, the most important thing is to be able to adapt to the picks and bans meta as it progresses, because it's always different from what you scrimmed with, because people just play a little bit more safe, a little more calculated. Maybe one pick that was getting auto-banned no longer gets auto-banned, stuff like that. So I think that Noble having a coach like Drelo will help them a ton in the set, and having the ability to see Oxygen play before their set will also help them when you have a coach like that. So I'm going to give Noble the edge here. I think Oxygen does take a game, and it's not an easy set for Noble, but I think if they play up to their potential, Noble should be able to take this. Noble against ALG, obviously, I left ALG, so they have new support. That's Guy in Your Bed. I don't really know much about how they've been doing. They had, a ton of issues that we were trying to work on when I was on the team. I don't know what their progress looks like in terms of how they're playing together, how their communication is, how they're feeling, all that stuff, how they're performing in scrims. I have no idea how any of that's going. What I do know is that Kabam as coach, similar to what I was saying about Drelo, will have this team very prepared for both Noble and Oxygen. I think that they predict this matchup before them, and they're ready to kind of see what happens here, and they're able to plan ahead. I think that ALG, the main player here is obviously Cyclone. He goes from West Coast ping to, normal LAN ping, much like Cherio getting better on LAN. I think Cyclone is similar in that respect. He always performs extremely well on LAN. Going against someone like Uzi, I think that is a clear mismatch in favor of ALG. I think that if Cyclone dominates his lane the way I know he can, that he could give Noble a ton of problems just by himself. However, I think that Noble, just as a team, is probably clicking a little bit better right now. I think that if Drelo kind of gets to adapt throughout the whole series, it should be very easy to tell what ALG wants to do. This is just a guess from me, but normally when you have a roster change like that, you don't get to practice that many different comps. So if they only have like one style they want to run and Noble identifies that and they counter that, it could be a really hard set for ALG. Like I said, I really have no idea. I'm kind of torn on what to vote for this. I'm actually going to go 2-1 in favor of Noble, I think, because if Chapo gets rolling again, I think if he starts yelling, he has potential to kind of get ALG a little bit upset or get him a little flustered, or, especially when you have a new player on LAN, like Guy in Your Bed, who knows how that'll go. So I think just off merits of LAN experience on its own and also momentum carrying from the last set, I think that I'll give this to Noble. Going against Gabe, this is also an interesting matchup in my opinion, because you have a lot of former teammates here. Walrus was on Noble last season. You have Hurrywin going against Drelo, who were teammates at regionals last year, all that stuff. It should be a pretty interesting set. I think my main thing about Gabe that I'm really excited about is seeing Snoopy and Ionic on LAN again. Mainly together, we obviously saw Snoopy a lot last year, but for Ionic, this is the first time he's playing support on a LAN setting since like TSM in season 2 at regionals. Like, it's been a long time. And Ionic historically always played really, really well on LAN, and him and Snoopy carried a lot of games for that TSM team. I think if they're able to kind of lead Gabe and have a good draft plan against Noble, that Gabe is probably a more talented team. I think that Walrus and Sinosure versus Uzzy and Chapo are kind of the matchups to really look for. If Walrus and Sinosure get good early pressure and they make some plays early, I think that they can put Noble in a really bad spot. And also the duo lane for Gabe going up against Wubbin and Wowie, I think that they just have a lot more lane experience. So I think the side lanes have significant advantages on the side of memory of Gabe. I'm going to give them the edge in the set because of that. And also another thing is that they have 2 sets to watch Noble and what they like to pick, what they like to ban. So I think if Gabe prepares correctly, I favor them in the set by a good bit. So I'm actually going to give that to them 2-0. Against Soar is a different story. You have, more former teammate type stuff going on again. Heroin versus Homie and Jigs and all that good stuff. Also Snoopy versus Jigs. A lot of former teammates playing against each other. The interesting thing about this is Soar, ever since they picked up FinoK, have been basically just stomping. They lost, I believe, 1 game, and that was to us when we were on Allegiance. I think we split with them, and that wasn't even like... They had to use Man Ray. They weren't even using Aninster. So it wasn't even their full roster, and that was the only game they lost in the second half of the split, I think. And overall, much like what I was saying about Cyclone and Cherio, Homifei is another player that gets a lot better on LAN because he goes from that West Coast ping to, 10, which is basically 0 on LAN. I think that if Sorg has good communication and shot calling, mainly through Aninster and through Jigs or whoever else. I don't know exactly what their comms are like. I think that they also have really good LAN performers. I didn't even mention Vedium, who's known for carrying super, super hard on every LAN that he's ever played at. If Sorg can show up and have good comms and not be flustered, no problems like that. Fine, okay, is chilling, doesn't have any issues on LAN. I think that Soar is... much like the regard I was talking about Elevate, I think mechanically they're such a strong team. I mean, FinoK is probably the weakest mechanical player on that team, and he's definitely not, a sludge or a slug or what the hell am I saying? Fuck off. He's not bad mechanically either, so Sword's a really good mechanical team. I think that they end up taking the set. I think it's a 3-game set either way. If you're Gabe, I think the way Gabe wins this set is if they can get kind of early pressure, and if they can get a good pick comp, if they can make Jigs feel uncomfortable, and they can get FinoK, who's been running a lot of Guardians and solo, if they can get him behind, and they can get those two in a position where they don't feel comfortable frontlining, then Gabe can have a lot of opportunities to win these games and make plays. I just don't know if I see that happening. Jigs is pretty much one of the safest support players there are, so I think unless Gabe gets a lot of free picks, that Soar should be looking good in that set. Then Soar against United. I end up having the freaking top 2 seeds play each other in both finals, but I guess that's just how it goes. United is like the ultimate LAN team in this gauntlet in terms of every single one of their players play a ton better on LAN. Specifically Benji and Pandacat, I think, are 2 really, really good players on LAN settings. They always make a ton of plays. Benji has carried a ton of games. More former teammate stuff here, Benji versus Vedium, all that crap. Doesn't really matter. I like E United in the set. I think it's a 3-game set no matter what. The reason I like E United is I think that with Chaos and Pain and Verizial, I think that they're so good at preparing for whatever team they're going to play and having the advantage of being able to watch any people play before them. I think E United is one of the worst teams that you could possibly want to have extra information on you to prepare for you. They're just so good at preparing a game plan. They're so good at picks and bans. And on top of that, they also kind of have that thing where they can get in your head if, Pandacat's yelling some weird shit about, flying across the sky as Jingwei or whatever he did at group stages last year. I think E United could be a really strong team on LAN, so I like them to make it through. That means we are going into the wild card. I'll do the the first place matchups first, because this doesn't really mean anything. This is just for seeding. I don't think it said on the website whether this was a best of 3 or a best of 1. I'll assume it's a best of 3, and I'm going to give it to I guess it doesn't really matter either way. I'm going to give it to Energy 2.0. I think they try to make a statement at this LAN to everybody who thinks that they've kind of fallen off a bit. I think that they'll be much more prepared on this LAN than they have been the rest of the online split. And, you know, talent and synergy together, it's fucking Energy. It's 2-time defending world champs. I'm not going to bet against them like I said earlier. Matchup that really matters is Enix vs. Soar, and I think it's kind of a shame that this is a best of 1, because this has a lot of potential to be a really good match. It's so hard to call any best of 1, because it's pretty much like a freaking coin flip. The advantage, I would say, is that all of these games are played on Friday, and all of the EU games are played on Saturday, so say Soar does come second, they get to watch Enix the entire day. So they're 2 sets, they get to watch them and see what they pick and ban. Whereas Enix isn't going to be planning around playing Soar, so they're not going to really... Like, they're going to have a little bit less time to prepare for Soar than vice versa. Overall, these games aren't until Sunday, so it's not that big of a deal, but it still is a small advantage to Soar. I think that in terms of team strength, I think Enix is a better team by a good amount. Cherio, like I mentioned, I think he's one of the best players on LAN, just in any position. If I had to bet on it, I would take Enix in the best of 1, but it really is so hard to tell. It's just so hard to like pick a team in a best of 1. It kind of does suck that it's a best of 1, but I don't know. I just think Enix overall is a stronger team, and that's what I'm going with. Anyways, that's the end of my predictions. I tried to give a little bit of insights from the matchups. I know it's a pretty long video as far as predictions go, but anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I appreciate you for watching. I am working on a couple other videos right now. I'm trying to get them out to you. I've actually had some issues replaying my files and editing them on my computer. I'm not sure why, so I'm trying to figure that out. Anyways, I'll try to get more content out. Make sure to watch the Gauntlet LAN on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I will be streaming these games on my Twitch and just, you know, watching them, analyzing them, or maybe doing a little bit of casting just for fun. So if you guys want to hang out, the link to my Twitch will be in the description. And other than that, I hope everybody has a good day, and I'll see you next time.